Hi, and welcome to another episode of Hot Takes with me, the Silver Fox, and the row between J.K. Rowling and Nicola Sturgeon continues unabated. This time, Rowling is claiming that Sturgeon's obsession with transgenderism is putting women at risk in Scotland like nothing else has ever done. She represents the biggest single threat to women's safety. Let's look at this article and see what's going on. Right, here it is. J.K. Rowling, she's saying Scotland's feminist First Minister, or the First Minuscule, putting women at risk with trans ideology. And she is quite right, and there she is, the lovely and fragrant J.K. Rowling, friend of the channel. Acclaimed writer J.K. Rowling has accused Scotland's real feminist First Minister of putting women in danger by pushing trans ideology. Nicola Sturgeon, the left separatist leader of Scotland's devolved government, roughly equivalent to a US state government, is putting women across her country at risk by pushing policies in line with radical trans ideology, J.K. Rowling has alleged. Let's just get something straight here. Nicola Sturgeon is in no way roughly equivalent to a US state government. She, if anything, is the mayor of a large town. She's got little power. She's half the mayor of London, effectively. 5 million people in Scotland, 10 million people in London. She's the equivalent of half a city mayor. And she's also an idiot. And she's also obsessed with socialism and obsessed with nationalism and with breaking up the UK. She has many obsessions. Unfortunately, being a decent human being isn't one of them. Known for being a staunch advocate of hate speech laws, Sturgeon's government is now preparing to pass a law that would allow people aged 16 and over to change their legal gender without medical evidence, a move many concerned women fear will give biological men increased access to hitherto women-only spaces. So if you are in a woman-only ward, man can walk in, claim to be a woman, whip his lady penis out, and that's perfectly acceptable. And if you say anything against it, you're guilty of hate speech. If you're a woman in a domestic V refuge and a man walks in claiming to be a woman and you complain about it, you're guilty of hate speech. This is where it is. So you could be a very, very vulnerable, psychologically and emotionally vulnerable woman who's previously been subjected to very, painful physical, abuse from a man. You've gone to a refuge. You're thinking it's women only in here. You're safe. You're away from any of that problem. All of a sudden a man walks in. He claims to be a woman. And there's nothing anyone can do about it. And should anyone complain, they're the guilty one. That's what Sturgeon is bringing in. Oh, and don't even get you started on women's changing rooms, where a grown man with full male genitalia can legally expose himself to other women. Because even though that genitalia is male, that man is now a woman who just happens to own a huge penis and scrotum. That's Nicola Sturgeon's protection of women. In an opinion piece, we'll carry on. In an opinion piece published in the Times on Sunday, Rowling outlined these fears, accusing Sturgeon, who describes herself as being a real feminist, if she was, she wouldn't be doing this, of riding roughshod over the rights of women and girls for her push for further transgenderism in Scotland. Sturgeon wants to do everything she can to destroy Scotland. She's already destroyed its education system and its social care system. It used to have one of the best education systems in the world. It's now one of the worst in the world. The drug problem in Scotland is probably the worst in Europe. Its crime rate is high. Its poverty is increasing exponentially. The economy itself is in the toilet. Jobs are going south because nobody wants to invest north of the border. This is what's happened under Sturgeon. And yet, if you listen to what she says, Scotland is the best place in the world to live. It's a beautiful place if you don't go anywhere near Scottish nationalists. The Scottish national, and I don't mean the individual people who vote Scottish nationalists, I mean the politicians themselves, because no matter where they put their grubby little mitts, it always turns shit, without a doubt. Now, a lot of people in Scotland will vote for the SNP, but they won't vote for independence. This is a fact. More people voted against independence than voted against the SNP. So even the SNP's own voters don't want independence. And so Sturgeon is on for a losing streak here. She cannot win. But what she's doing is she's determined that, knowing that she can't win her cause for getting an independent Scotland, will do the best she can do to completely destroy Scotland. She is one of those who just wants to see the world burn. And she is going to damage a lot of people and make a lot of lives miserable with it. Not that you ever see her smile. She has that fake smile that she puts on. But being socialist, she doesn't really like happiness. Misery is where she lives. And she is a miserable woman, isn't she? Anyway, soon in Scotland, it may be easier to change the sex on your birth certificate than it is to change it on your passport, the author wrote in an article, accusing the First Minuscule of being deaf to women's concerns over gender ID. In consequence, intact male, i.e. trans women with penises, who are judged to have met the meagre requirements, will be considered as valid and entitled to protections as those who have had full sexual reassignment surgery, and more male-bodied individuals will assert more strongly a right to be in women's spaces, such as public bathrooms, changing rooms, our support centres, DV refuges, hospital wards and prison cells that were hitherto reserved for women. And I will say that once this goes through, there will not be a male prison in Scotland. Or if there are, it will be filled with women claiming to be men. Because they'll not want to go into a woman's prison because it'll be filled with men. Anyway, rarely in politics is it easy to draw a direct line from a single policy decision to the harm it's done. But in this case, it will be simple. If any women or girls suffer voyeurism, abuse, harassment, assault, or are, in consequence of the Scottish Government's lax new rules, the blame will rest squarely with those at Holyrood who ignored safeguarding experts and women's campaigners. Now, I'm going to tell you now that when they were bringing this rule in, and you probably come to this piece in a minute, they refused to consult with women. They absolutely, Holyrood, the Scottish Parliament, SNP, absolutely point blank refused to enter into any consultations with women. But did they enter into consultations with transgenders? Oh boy, yes. Anyway, Rowling also claimed in her piece that the committee in charge of the consultation process for the bill refused to meet in person with 5 female survivors of abuse, despite supposedly having time to do so with 17 people described as being trans-identified. So they wouldn't meet with women who were the victims, but they will meet with sad men with hurty fifis. And then they'll change the law to say, oh, we're going to look after the sad men with the hurty fifis and we'll put the women under the bus. Under the leadership of Sturgeon's SNP, Scotland's government, as well as its deep state, has become increasingly more hardline in pushing a pro-transgenderism agenda. For example, government workers in the country were told earlier this year that the very concept of biological sex was a falsehood. These people were telling them that it's a falsehood, and it is quite clearly not a falsehood. They are lying. They are pushing an agenda that is going to be damaging to children, to women, to girls in particular, and also that weird, fucked up, mentally ill men can get in close with vulnerable women and children. Nicola Sturgeon is a fucking groomer, and she is a fucking P. She is pushing men onto children, and that's because that's who she is. All her policies are to make sure that grown men get in close with girls, with young girls. What does that tell you about Sturgeon? And what does it tell you about the SNP? Well, we all know what the P stands for in SNP now, don't we? They are filth. They are scum. And I tell you what, Rowling has got them bang to rights this time. Children have also been able to unescape the trans ideology push, with nurseries in the country being told they should avoid sexist male and female pronouns while teaching. And in particular, official Scottish guidelines for nurseries, in part penned by pro-transgenderism NGOs, instructs carers to use more inclusive pronouns when teaching children and to substitute sexist language for inclusive synonyms. The guide picks out terms, Mr. Squirrel and man-made, as deserving to be memory hold. Advocating for child workers is said to say squirrel and manufactured, respectively. These people are sick, disgusting filth who want to push grown men onto children and vulnerable women. People of Scotland, you need to ask why she's pushing this. Why is she wanting your children to be put into endangered spaces with grown men? Why does she want that? Why does she keep pushing this? What the fuck is wrong with her? She is dangerous. She is sick. She is filth. And you keep voting for her. Well, let me tell you, when your daughter comes home and tells you what's happened today in school or what's happened today in the shopping arcade when she went to try on a dress in a woman-only changing room, who are you going to blame? Well, you're going to blame the person who brought this fucking law in, I hope. She's a disgusting piece of filth. The SNP are all disgusting pieces of filth. And the people of Scotland, who generally are much better than this, really need to stop voting for them and get these sick, disgusting perverts out of office. I'm done here. I'm coming up and I'm rolling off. I'm glad this is my last video of the day because, honestly, it's got me so angry. And I feel so sorry for the people in Scotland. You have not asked for this. You did not vote for this. This wasn't part of any manifesto. No one in the SNP put a piece of paper down as a manifesto and says, we're going to endanger your children. And yet that's what they're doing. These people are pushing on you something that 99% of you would be absolutely appalled at if it was to happen to your children. Nobody wants this. The sick, weird, mentally ill men want it. Those men who want to get really close to vulnerable women and children. Oh yeah, shit, they want it. But normal, decent people do not want this. And yet, it's being foisted on you. You need to send the message. You need to fight it, Scotland. You need to do something because ultimately you're going to lose your children. They're already gaslighting them and grooming them in nursery school. How do you think it's going to be in 10 years' time? It's going to be unbelievably awful. And the victims here, the true victims, are the ones who are 5 and 6 years of age now, because they're going to grow up and thinking that what's happening is perfectly normal. And it isn't. And it's wrong. And I'm going to take a breath and I'm going to stop. I'm going to say thank you very much for listening. If you like what you hear and see on the channel, please hit the subscribe button if you haven't already. Ring the bell for notification of future output. Leave a like, leave a comment, please share the video. And until next time, stay safe, stay well, reject the SNP's awful policy, and goodbye.